MLB players and owners are currently in a labor dispute, and it's getting ugly. All pictures, videos, and articles that feature current Major League players have been deleted from MLB.com. Steroid testing has been completely halted. One team told their players not to make plans to go to spring training yet, and one player whose brother is a minor league manager says that he had to ignore him during Christmas dinner because the two of them talking is now illegal. Baseball may not be played anytime soon, but when it is, there could be a whole new playoff structure, a designated hitter in the National League, and a pitch clock, if they can agree. Unfortunately, right now, players and owners absolutely hate each other. A player has even accused the league of quietly making new baseballs that don't go as far, solely so they can pay players less money. Dozens of players have publicly smeared Rob Manfred, who at the moment may be the most hated man in baseball. The owners have said the players are making demands that are unrealistic and would damage the sport forever, and a report even claims a journalist has lost his job just for being critical of Commissioner Rob Manfred. The last time a labor dispute like this happened, a World Series was canceled. Major leaguers got jobs in grocery stores, were replaced by players who used to work in grocery stores, and steroids entered the game at a record pace. And in 2022, MLB could be heading to this same exact scenario. The reason MLB is currently shut down essentially boils down to an argument between these two men. This is Tony Clark. He is the head of the Players Association. And this is Rob Manfred. He is the commissioner. And right now, he has a ton of haters.
He's just an idiot. He's an absolute idiot. I don't know how that guy gets $25 million a year to talk, though. He is a dumb.
Fairly or unfairly, Rob Manfred gets criticized every time he speaks, like in 2019 when he appeared to be drunk at a Pirates game.
I think more gets made out of the momentum for change than there is in reality.
Or in 2020 when he appeared to be drunk at the World Series.
Mark, you thrilled our fans throughout the postseason with a great performance. You led the Dodgers to a World Series victory.
Rob Manfred wasn't actually drunk. He was just receiving audio feedback through his headset, which throws off people's speech. But many fans like to ignore that, and that's the point. Manfred has a tough job. As commissioner, he is employed by the owners. So when owners are fighting the players in a labor dispute, like right now, he has to take the owner's side, and players don't like this.
Maybe as the commissioner of baseball, you could solve some of these things. Say, freaking.
But Bauer is far from the only player to bash Rob Manfred, like in 2020 when Manfred famously said, unequivocally, there will be a baseball season in 2020. A week later, he said, quote, "I'm not confident there will be a baseball season in 2020. The Players Association responded by saying that they were disgusted with the commissioner, then dozens of players immediately attacked him on Twitter, pointing out that there was a petition for him to resign, and the negotiations were, quote, slimy, tone-deaf, greedy, lying, leaking, and out of touch. What you may not realize is that these tweets were likely planned, meaning that players got together and said now's a good time to roast Rob Manfred on Twitter to help us in negotiations, and the league and owners use the media to do the same thing. If you go to MLB.com right now, there is an entire page filled with articles written by a journalist employed by MLB, which will lead you to think MLB players have the strongest union in the world, have more benefits than any other athletes, and are making more money now than ever. This isn't true. Players have also made some pretty intense accusations, including one made against the league and owners in 2021 that, if proven, would undoubtedly cause the league to go through another massive scandal. But before that, thanks to Zynga for sponsoring today's video. Do you play poker? Are you good at poker? Well, let's find out how good. With Zynga Poker's brand new feature, League of World Champions, you can battle with users across the world to see who's good enough to earn a spot on the coveted Grand Champion leaderboard. The more you win, the more perks, bonuses, and prize chests you will receive. And the more you level up and advance through each of the 5 divisions. If you really have what it takes, you can earn the rare achievement of being on the Grand Champion Top 500 leaderboard. If you get to the number 1 spot, then congratulations, because you are truly a poker legend. Zynga's Grand Champion feature is now live, and if you download it using my link below, Zynga will give you a free 3 million coin bonus just to get you started. It's available on iOS, the Google Play Store, and on the web. You can play in tournaments, in casual games, in fast games, in slow games, 5-player games, 9-player games. It really has anything you could want, no matter what skill level you are. So if you want to see if you have what it takes to be a Grand Champion, click the link below and download Zynga Poker today. This past season, Pete Alonso claimed that MLB implemented new, more aerodynamic baseballs that traveled further in 2019 solely because there were a ton of big-name pitchers set to become free agents that offseason. These new balls would theoretically make pitcher stats worse, so owners wouldn't have to pay them as much. And in 2021, they made the balls less aerodynamic to make hitters' stats worse because a ton of big-name shortstops were going to become free agents. Now, it is true the balls in 2019 traveled further than the balls in 21, but claiming the league did this on purpose just to reduce salary at the moment seems very far-fetched. Who knows if Alonso said this thinking it could help in a labor dispute, but both players and owners know having the media on their side is a huge advantage. A report from the New York Post says that MLB Network didn't renew Ken Rosenthal's contract solely because he was critical of Rob Manfred in an article written in 2020. Pitcher Tyler Matzik responded by saying Ken Rosenthal is only 5'4.5" but still, quote, towers over Rob Manfred, who is #soft. MLB and Manfred allegedly getting rid of a journalist for criticizing him is pretty insane, and who knows if it's completely true. However, Dan Le Batard came out afterwards saying that Manfred also tried to get him fired in 2017 after doing what he says was the worst interview done by a commissioner in history.
We're starting with a lie, Rob. Like, that's where we're starting. I think you cared more about that $1.2 billion asking price than you did about the fans of South Florida.
You actually have no idea what I care about and don't care about. You want to ask me questions, I'll answer them the way that I want to answer.
The tensions between players and the commissioner and owners hasn't been this bad since 1994, which resulted in one of the biggest disasters in MLB history. And today, the two sides are arguing over the exact same thing, the CBA, which is essentially an agreement that determines the rules and finances of baseball. This agreement expires around every 5 years. In a recent history, this wasn't a big deal because the two sides agreed to a new CBA before the old one expires. But when they can't, three things can happen. The owners can do what they're doing now. They can lock out the players, refusing to let them play or get paid until they agree to a new CBA. Owners can also agree to temporarily use the old CBA and games go on as normal. Or owners agree to temporarily use the old CBA and players go on strike, refusing to play until a new agreement is reached. In 1994, players and owners couldn't agree on a CBA, so players went on strike in the middle of the season. The strike lasted so long, Bill Clinton threatened to take the case to Congress. The rest of the season was canceled, and even established players were running out of money. Mike Gallego had to get a job working at Kmart, and even Chipper Jones got a job on Atlanta Talk Radio.
I would put it up under my cup, right up under the cup. Okay. Who's gonna go check your ball sack?
Owners attempted to break the union by having a season with replacement players, which was a complete disaster and consisted of complete nobodies like Joe Cipollone, who worked in a pizzeria and hadn't played baseball in 7 years, or washed up major leaguers like Pedro Bordon, who was 48 years old at the time, and a few current minor leaguers who played and were ostracized by teammates for the rest of their careers for doing it. Manager Davey Johnson called replacement players a, quote, travesty. Manager Sparky Anderson refused to manage them altogether, and Major Leaguer Bobby Bonilla said that any player who crossed the picket line would, quote, end up in the East River. Mike Bush filled in as a replacement player, then made the majors with actual players in 1995. During his debut, his teammates refused to sit with him on the bench and barely interacted with him all year. Kevin Millar was a replacement player who would go on to win the 2004 World Series, but isn't featured on any of the commemorative memorabilia or allowed to be featured in MVP Baseball 2005 because the Players Association refused to license his name. Instead, EA Sports made him look like this and gave him the fake name Anthony Anthony Freeze. Finally, after 8 months, a judge ordered the owners to play the 1995 season under the old CBA, and on April 26th, the most chaotic opening day in history began. The Pirates tried to lure fans in by giving away free pirate flags, but in the 5th inning, the game was delayed because fans started throwing them onto the field. Tom Glavine got booed in his own stadium, 3 fans ran onto the field and protested on the second base bag in New York, and 1 fan ran into the outfield and threw a dollar bill at Bobby Bonilla's face. In total, over 900 games were canceled. Owners lost over $1 billion, players lost over $300 million. The working relationship got so bad that Commissioner Bud Selig and the head of the Players Association were caught screaming at each other during the World Series. Attendance dropped 20%, and according to many, only rampant steroid use was able to bring baseball back to its popularity. And there's a real chance that all of this could happen again. The argument that no baseball will be played in 2022 goes as follows. Baseball is in a very similar place now as it was in 1994. Just like now, tensions were peaking. From 1968 until 1994, every single time the CBA expired, there was a labor stoppage, and the Players Association dominated these negotiations. As a result, their salaries skyrocketed. Owners were tired of losing, so when another dispute came in 1994, they were no longer willing to compromise. The same thing is happening now, but in the opposite direction. Since 1994, there have been 0 labor stoppages, and players have lost every negotiation. Owners have earned more revenue sharing, a luxury tax, and have increased that tax greatly. As a result, the average player's salary has dropped over 6% since 2017, and the median salary has dropped 30% since 2015, and over 60% of major leaguers are making less than $1 million a year. At the same time, MLB revenue has tripled since 2001, setting a record every single year until 2020, and once stadiums are back at full capacity for a full season, it will almost certainly go up again. League and owners are making more money, but most of the players are not. Just like the owners in 1994, players are tired of losing negotiations, making it less likely they'll compromise even if it means losing games. They're also making several criminal accusations against owners. This also happened leading up to 1994, when players caught Commissioner Peter Ueberroth literally secretly conspiring to eliminate free agency, which is insanely illegal and was insanely obvious when the #1 free agent in baseball, Kirk Gibson, only received 1 offer, and it was from his previous team, the Detroit Tigers. Turns out the owners made a secret agreement where they would only sign a free agent if the player's former team allowed it. Owners were caught and were forced to pay $434 million for doing this. So the next time the CBA expired in 1994, players were pissed and did not want to compromise with owners. A similar scenario is playing out right now. In 2018, players were seriously considering going on strike after going through the slowest month of January in the history of free agency. Over 100 free agents were unsigned by February, and players felt owners were conspiring to devalue players to save money, and held a conference call where they seriously discussed going on strike. This never happened, but the very next year, they opened up an investigation of the league for collusion after the Braves general manager publicly said he connected with 27 teams and have a good idea of what they are going to do in free agents. The next year, things got even worse, causing the Players Association to file a $500 million grievance against MLB. Leading up to the shortened 2020 season, players and owners agreed to a deal that said if they play 1/3 of a season, players would earn 1/3 of their original salaries. Both sides agreed. Then Rob Manfred and the owners said, actually, you need to agree to less money, claiming that teams were going to lose billions of dollars. This resulted in a very public dispute that lasted weeks and ended when owners finally agreed to play under the original deal. The Players Association claims the owners did this in bad faith just to stall the start of the season, forcing a shorter schedule, because less games meant they could pay players a smaller percentage of their salary. Players filed a $500 million grievance that is still pending. At the end of the day, the owners got what they wanted, a shorter season. So just like in 1994, one side is on an extended losing streak, accusing the other of conspiracy, and tensions are peaking, making a compromise extremely hard. However, there is also an argument that a full season can be played, and if it is, there could be a whole new set of rules. Broadly speaking, this is what the two sides are asking for. Players want free agency to start earlier in their careers to increase salary, getting rid of the luxury tax which punishes teams for spending money, getting rid of revenue sharing between clubs, and a higher minimum salary. Owners want to replace the arbitration system, lower the luxury tax threshold which limits spending even more revenue sharing, and extending the time it takes to get to free agency. There's also potential rule changes. Players want a universal designated hitter because it creates more jobs for players. Owners not so much because it means they would have to pay more in salary. But if players are willing to trade it for an increase in luxury tax penalties, this could very likely be a rule in 2022. Owners want an expanded playoff with 14 teams. Some players worry lowering the bar for playoffs will lead to teams spending less, but if owners are willing to trade it for a higher minimum salary for players, this could also very well be a rule in 2022. Rob Manfred has expressed interest in a pitch clock because he wants to shorten the time of games. Many players don't want this. But if they're willing to accept the rule change in exchange for shortening the time it takes for players to get to free agency, a pitch clock could also be implemented. This is the least likely of rule changes, but you get the point. This is just one big trade-off where both sides ask for everything and then compromise on their original proposal. The bad news is, this is already the longest lockout in MLB history. In order for spring training to start on time, a deal is going to have to get done fast, and one team already seems to think this won't happen. Every day that goes by makes missing games seem more and more likely. The lockout prohibits players from interacting with anyone from MLB. They can't use facilities, talk to coaches, or rehab with team trainers. Legally, MLB can't use players' likeness, so there's nothing on the website, and until the lockout ends, it seems like nobody is getting drug tested. The good news is, in the history of MLB labor disputes, a lockout has never resulted in games being missed. If games are missed, both sides will lose money, which is a big incentive to compromise. And it's still the offseason. And honestly, as long as MLB plays 162 games, everybody will forget this ever happened. I don't know when a deal will be made, but before it does, there will be a ton of tension, mean tweets, and each side will leak information to win over the public. But when they finally agree, baseball will be back and everyone will be happy.